Hello, my name is Barbara. I worked day and night for years to make my son's dreams come true. But at his wedding, my nameplate read low class. Can you imagine the betrayal? The heartbreak? I thought I raised him right, but it turns out I was just a tool in his game. But that's not the worst of it. No, the real shock came when I found out what they were doing behind my back, selling my house, stealing my inheritance, all while pretending to care. You won't believe the twist that followed. I sat in the back of the church, my hands trembling slightly as I held my purse. It was a beautiful day, no doubt about that. The sun shone through the stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns across the floor. But none of that reached me. I could feel the coldness creeping into my chest, an icy knot that wouldn't loosen no matter how many breaths I took. My son Jason was getting married. This should have been the happiest moment of my life, but instead, I felt like an intruder in a place I didn't belong. It wasn't just the wedding. It was everything that led up to this moment. All those years I worked, the long hours in the factory, the late nights doing laundry for other people, the times I missed out on sleep because I had to make sure Jason had what he needed. A mother's love, they say. But what did that love cost me? It was all supposed to pay off today, to see my son standing at the altar, marrying someone who could elevate him, who could take him places I couldn't. I was proud of him, but there was also fear gnawing at me, fear of losing him to a world I could never fully be a part of. I had raised him alone, fought for every little thing he had, pushed him to be better, to be more than the limitations this world often placed on us. And now, I stood here in my best dress, feeling like a stranger in my own son's life. This wasn't just a wedding. This was a reminder of how far apart our worlds had grown. His world, polished and perfect, and mine, gritty and real. The sound of laughter brought me back to the moment, but not in a good way. I could hear them. The bride's family, their voices high and sharp. I didn't need to look to know what they were saying. I could feel it in the way the room shifted around me. I was out of place. Then I saw it. My nameplate. It was just a little thing, a detail meant to give order to the chaos of this event. But it didn't take much to see what it said. Low class, in scrawled cursive across the card next to my full name. My stomach sank. It was a mockery, a joke. A joke at my expense, made in front of all these people I didn't know, people who didn't know the sacrifices I'd made. I tried to hold my head high, but the shame burned through me. I looked around, hoping for a familiar face, for Jason. Maybe he would see what was happening, maybe he'd stand up for me. But he wasn't looking at me. He was too busy with the bride's family, smiling for the cameras, too caught up in his own world to see the world I was standing in. The laughter grew louder, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I'd worked my whole life for this moment, and yet here I was, sitting at the table where nobody wanted me. I was nothing but a joke to them. But I couldn't leave. I had to be strong. I had to be the mother Jason needed me to be. But God, how badly I wanted to walk out of that room, to disappear and never look back. The insults kept coming, and I pretended not to hear. But it was impossible. One of the bride's relatives, a woman with too much makeup and too little class, leaned in and said it loud enough for me to hear. She's just a low-class woman doing menial work. Probably didn't even finish high school. The words hit me like a slap. I couldn't breathe. I felt the tears prick at my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I was stronger than this. I had to be. My son was supposed to be proud of me. This wasn't what I envisioned for his big day. I had fought for him, and now, he had no idea what was happening right under his nose. I felt my feet shift, and I stood up, ready to leave. I couldn't take any more of this, but as I turned to walk away, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Jason. "Mom," he said softly, but I could hear the anger in his voice. "What's wrong?" I wanted to scream at him, to tell him everything, to let him know how much it hurt, how small they had made me feel. But I didn't. I just stood there, trying to fight the tears, trying to keep my dignity intact. "I saw everything," he said, his voice low, "and I'm not going to let them treat you like this." For a moment, I thought I had imagined it. I thought maybe I had heard wrong, but when I turned to look at him, I saw the fire in his eyes. He wasn't angry at me. He was angry at them. "They're going to regret this," Jason said, his words cold and full of promise. "I'm going to make sure they know exactly who they're dealing with." The tension in the room was palpable. I could feel it in my bones. And for the first time that evening, I felt like I had hope. Jason's anger was all I needed. He was no longer the little boy I had raised. He was a man, and he was standing up for me. Standing up for what was right. I could feel my heart swell with pride, but there was something else, too. Something darker. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. As we walked out of that ballroom, I knew this wasn't just a wedding. This was the beginning of something bigger. Jason wasn't done yet, and neither was I. I sat on the couch, staring out the window. The sunlight filtered through the blinds, but it didn't warm me. Nothing could warm me right now. Jason had been quiet ever since we left the wedding. I could feel the weight of everything pressing down on me, the hurt, the anger, and something else too, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. It was hard to admit, but I didn't know what to expect anymore. Jason had always been a good son. But today, something shifted. The wedding, the insult, the cruelty of those people, it had shaken me to my core. And yet here we were, in the quiet of our small house in the suburbs of Atlanta. Jason was next to me now, but there was something different in the way he held himself. He wasn't just my son anymore. He had become something more, something that made me rethink everything I thought I knew about him. "Mom," he said, his voice steady but full of emotion. "I saw everything. I know what they said. I saw how they treated you." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. I hadn't expected him to say that. A part of me thought he was too caught up in the moment to notice. That part of me was wrong. He saw it all. Every last humiliating moment. He had known. And the realization hit me hard. "I didn't want to tell you at the wedding," Jason continued, his voice calm but fierce. "I didn't want to make it worse for you, but I can't let them get away with it. Not anymore." I didn't know what to say. My mind was racing. All these years I had thought I was protecting him, raising him to be strong, to make something of himself. And now, here he was, showing me that he had learned more than I had realized. It wasn't just about surviving, it was about standing up. He wasn't the little boy I used to shield from the world. No, he was standing beside me, ready to fight for me. He pulled out his phone and handed it to me. "I recorded some of what they said. I want you to see it. I need you to know, I'm not going to let them get away with it." The footage was raw. It wasn't just words. It was the sneering laughter, the mocking tone, the way they looked at me like I was beneath them. It was everything I had feared but never had to see with my own eyes. The tears I'd been holding back started to sting, but this time, they weren't tears of shame. They were tears of pride. My son saw me, he heard me, and he wasn't going to let them tear me down. He sat down beside me, his hand resting on mine. "I'm going to make them regret this," he said quietly. "I won't stand by and let them treat you like this. We're going to fix this." I could feel the anger rising within me, but it was different now. It wasn't just the humiliation. It wasn't just the shame. It was something else, something that felt like a spark of hope. He was fighting for me. He was fighting for us. "You don't have to do this," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if I meant it. Part of me still wanted to protect him from the fallout, from the consequences of going up against that family, but another part of me, no, it was the part of me that had been fighting for so long, wanted to see him do it, to see him stand up, not just for me, but for himself too. "I'm already doing it," Jason replied, his voice stronger now, more certain. "They need to know who they're dealing with. They need to know that we're not to be messed with." I had always thought that I was the strong one, that I had to hold it all together, that I had to make the hard choices. But here he was, showing me that strength wasn't just about holding on, it was about fighting back. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. I was proud of him, proud of us, and yet I was scared. This wasn't going to be easy. There was no going back now. Jason leaned back against the couch, his jaw clenched. "You know what I've been doing, right? You know I've been building something." I've been quietly building my own business, making moves, and I didn't want to tell you. I didn't want you to think I was trying to replace the family I had with you. But now, I'm ready. I've got the power to make them listen." My mind was reeling. He had done this on his own. He had built something for himself, a tech startup, a business empire, all without me even knowing. I couldn't believe it. I was shocked, proud, and yet a little lost. How could he have kept all of this from me? But at the same time, how could I be anything but proud? My son was a force to be reckoned with. He continued, "I turned down investments from Emily's father. He thought that because of who I am, he could use his money to control me. I refused. That's why they think they can treat me like this. But they're wrong." The anger I had felt before began to fade into something else. Pride. A deep, burning pride that I had never felt before. He had been planning this all along. He had the power. And now, we would use it. "What are you going to do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Jason looked at me, his eyes filled with determination. "We're going to make sure they know who we are. We're going to take back what's ours." The thought of going up against the Westbourne family, a family with wealth and influence, terrified me. But Jason wasn't scared. He had already been preparing for this. And now we were going to do this together. "You've got my back?" I asked. "Always," he replied. "We're in this together." In that moment, everything changed. I wasn't alone anymore. Jason wasn't just my son. He was my partner, my ally. And together, we were going to take on the world. The quiet after the wedding still lingered in my bones. The bitterness of the insults, the weight of the betrayal, it all wrapped itself around me like a thick fog. I hadn't expected this. The mockery, the laughter, the way they looked at me like I was nothing. My son Jason had always been the bright light in my life. But what did it mean if he couldn't protect me from this world? What did it mean if the man I raised, the man I worked so hard for, was now caught between two worlds? The Westbournes had made their stance clear. They were the ones with power, with privilege, and they thought they could trample me without a second thought. But Jason had already surprised me. He had been watching, even when I didn't know he was. He had stood in the shadows, recording their insults, plotting a way to fight back. And now, in the silence of our small home in Atlanta, I felt a shift. My son wasn't just reacting anymore. He was taking charge. This wasn't a passive response to their treatment. It was the beginning of something bigger, and it scared the hell out of me. Jason paced the living room, his face a mixture of determination and frustration. He wasn't the same man who had been my little boy, wide-eyed and vulnerable. He was a man who had been silently preparing for this moment, and now he was ready to act. I knew he had a quiet strength. But this was something else entirely. "I'm done playing nice," he said, his voice steady. "They think they can push us around? They think they can humiliate you and get away with it? Not anymore. I've got a plan." I stared at him, my mind reeling. A part of me wanted to pull him back, to protect him from the fallout that was sure to come. But the other part, the part that had been silently screaming inside me for years, wanted him to do this. I wanted him to take control. "Jason, you know this could get ugly, right?" I asked, my voice trembling just a little. "I know, Mom," he said, sitting beside me on the couch. "But we can't let them get away with it. This isn't just about us anymore. It's about standing up for what's right." I nodded, but I wasn't sure if I was ready for what was coming. The weight of it all was heavy on my chest, but there was also something else, something that felt like hope. A small ember, barely lit, but enough to give me courage. Jason's first move came quickly. He didn't waste time, didn't drag his feet. He was already ahead of the game. I watched as he took out his phone, his fingers moving with precision. Before I knew it, he had purchased a controlling stake in the Westbourne family's hospitality business. A quiet, calculated strike that sent shockwaves through their empire. "They won't see this coming," Jason said, his eyes gleaming with purpose. "I'm not just fighting with emotion, I'm fighting with strategy." He explained how he'd been keeping an eye on their finances for months. Every move they made, Every piece of their business had been under his radar. He had positioned himself strategically, knowing that the Westbournes would never expect him to be this powerful. And now, with this move, he had their attention. At first, I was hesitant. I didn't fully understand what he was doing, but as he laid it out for me, I began to see the brilliance of it. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about taking back control. It was about leveling the playing field. The Westbournes had been living in their bubble of privilege for too long. Jason was pulling them down to earth, and I couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. But pride was tempered by something else: fear. This was real now. We weren't just talking about small, petty insults anymore. We were talking about power, money, and a fight that could cost us everything. The Westbourne family didn't stay silent for long. They retaliated in the only way they knew how, by trying to destroy Jason's reputation. And they started a smear campaign, using their wealth and influence to plant rumors about his business dealings, questioning his integrity, and making sure their connections in the media knew just what to say. The attacks were vicious, but they were nothing Jason hadn't anticipated. I watched as the news about Jason's supposed scandals began to spread. People started whispering, casting doubt on everything he'd built. The Westbournes weren't just trying to destroy his business, they were trying to break him emotionally, to make him question his worth. It stung. I could feel the heat of their anger, the sharpness of their words. I was scared. I knew this wasn't going to be easy, and the stakes were higher than I'd ever imagined. Jason, though, didn't flinch. He didn't waver. He just kept moving forward, quiet and steady. And I knew, deep down, that he was right. We couldn't stop now. But me, I wasn't sure if I could take much more. The weight of it all pressed down on me, and I found myself at a crossroads. Should I step back? Should I let him fight this battle on his own? Or should I stand by him, no matter what it cost? The doubt lingered in my mind, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't just sit back anymore, not when it was clear that Jason needed me as much as I needed him. Later that night, after all the noise had died down, I found myself sitting in front of the computer, my mind racing. I hadn't been involved in any of Jason's business dealings. I hadn't seen the full scope of what he was capable of. But as I stared at the screen, I realized something. Jason was no longer just my son. He was a man who was willing to fight, willing to protect what was his. And now it was my turn to step up. The next move was mine. I started drafting a legal response to the smear campaign. It was time to fight back. We had the resources, we had the evidence, and we had the will to see this through. The Westbournes had made their move. Now, it was time for us to make ours. Just as I was finishing up the draft, Jason walked into the room, his face grim. He didn't have to say anything. I could see it in his eyes. The Westbournes had struck again. This time, they had gone after his business connections, trying to turn his allies against him. They were throwing everything they had at him, and I knew it was only going to get worse from here, but something in me had shifted. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was ready to fight. I had nothing left to lose. Jason looked at me, his eyes searching mine. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice low and steady. I nodded, feeling a fire inside me that hadn't been there before. Let's do this. We weren't just fighting for respect anymore. We were fighting for our future. And as I looked at the evidence we had gathered, the video of the Westbournes' illegal dealings, I knew this was just the beginning. We had the power now, but power always comes with a price. And the question was, how much were we willing to lose? The house was quiet, too quiet. The night after the storm of Jason's actions, the silence felt heavy, like a weight on my chest. Sitting there, across from him in our living room, I could feel the tension in the air. The quiet wasn't just from the absence of noise, it was the calm before the storm. And in that stillness, I started to reflect on everything that had happened. The wedding, the insults, the fight we had started, and now, the reality of the war we were in. Jason had been ready for this, but I wasn't sure I was. I wasn't sure I could handle what was coming next. He had made his move, and now there was no going back. The Westbournes weren't going to take this lying down, and I could already feel the repercussions of everything we had started. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about respect, family, and, if I was being honest, revenge. And the price? I wasn't sure I was ready to pay it. I closed my eyes, the weight of the last few days crashing over me. I had raised Jason with all the love and strength I had, but what had we done? What had he done? And more importantly, what was I willing to lose in the process? I thought about the years, the sacrifices, the nights I stayed up working, doing everything I could to make sure Jason had a better life. And now, here we were, on the brink of destroying everything. But maybe it was worth it. Maybe we had been silent for too long. Maybe it was time to stand up for what we deserved. Jason, as calm as ever, sat across from me. I saw the determination in his eyes, but also a flicker of something I hadn't noticed before. Was it fear? Or was it the realization that this war we were in was bigger than anything he had expected? "I don't know if I can do this," I said, my voice low, almost a whisper. Jason looked at me, his expression softening. "You don't have to do it alone, Mom," he said. "I'm here. We're in this together." But even his words didn't ease the weight on my heart. I couldn't help but wonder if this was the right path, or if we were walking into something that would destroy us both. The Westbournes weren't just a family we could beat with a few smart moves. They were power, they were money, and they had been in control for far too long. Jason's plans were already in motion. He didn't wait for my approval. He didn't need it. He was moving fast, hitting the Westbournes where it hurt most, their wallets. He had already made his first move, purchasing a controlling stake in their hospitality business. It was a strategic strike, and one that sent ripples through the family's carefully built empire. I watched him work, his focus unwavering. He didn't even flinch when the news hit. He had expected it. He knew this was coming, but I couldn't shake the fear that accompanied it. I had seen the way the Westbournes reacted to his rise, the way they had belittled us at the wedding. And now, they were going to come for us with everything they had. Jason knew that, but it didn't seem to faze him. "It's not about the money, Mom," he said one evening as we sat down to dinner. "It's about showing them that we won't be silenced. We're not just some little family they can walk all over." I didn't know if I could go that far. Revenge had never been in my heart. But now, it was all I could think about. Was this what I had raised him to do? To fight back? To stand tall, even when it meant losing everything? "Are we ready for this?" I asked, my voice tinged with doubt. Jason met my gaze, and for the first time, I saw the weight of it in his eyes too. "We don't have a choice, Mom. We've already crossed that line." The Westbournes weren't going to let this go without a fight. The retaliation came quickly. They hired a public relations firm, launching a full-scale smear campaign against Jason. They spread rumors, attacked his business practices, and tried to tarnish his reputation in the media. I could feel the tension rise as the articles started popping up, each one more vicious than the last. They were using everything at their disposal to bring him down. And then things got personal. I started receiving anonymous threats. At first, it was just phone calls, strange numbers, muffled voices telling me to back off, that we'd be sorry if we didn't. But then the letters came. At first, they were cryptic, but they quickly turned more aggressive. The Westbournes were taking no chances. The threats weren't just about me, though. They were about Jason. They were trying to break him, and that hurt more than anything. I wasn't afraid of what they could do to me. But Jason, I was terrified for him. "Mom, they're just trying to scare us," Jason said one night after I showed him the latest letter. "It's not just about scaring us anymore," I replied, my voice trembling. "This is bigger than we thought. They won't stop until they've destroyed everything we've built." Jason remained calm, but I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his fists clenched when he thought no one was looking. He wasn't backing down, but I wasn't sure how much further this could go. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to sit by and watch Jason fight this battle alone. If we were going to take them down, I had to step up. I called a lawyer the next day, someone who had handled cases against big corporations before. I needed to be ready for whatever the Westbournes threw at us next. "Jason," I said after the phone call ended, "I'm not standing on the sidelines anymore. We're in this together, but we're not just going to fight with their rules. We're going to take them down on our terms." Jason looked at me, surprised, but there was something in his eyes. something that made me feel like we were about to take control of this whole damn thing. The next few days were a blur. Jason's team worked on gathering more evidence, and I dove into the legal documents. We were ready, but we both knew something bigger was coming. And then, the bombshell dropped. As I sifted through the papers, something caught my eye. A document, an internal memo from the Westbourne family, outlining some shady dealings that went back years. But it wasn't just about money. It was personal, very personal. I held the paper in my hands, staring at it. I knew what this meant. This was the thing that could destroy them, the thing that could bring everything to a halt. But it also meant crossing a line we might never come back from. As I stared at the evidence, I realized that we had the power now. But at what cost? The question wasn't about what we could do anymore, it was about what we were willing to lose. And just like that, I knew. We were no longer fighting for justice. We were fighting for survival. The weight of what we were doing was starting to sink in. Every move we made, every step toward destroying the Westbourne family, was like another piece of our own soul being chipped away. I never thought it would come to this. I never imagined the path we'd walk down would cost us so much. But here we were, standing at the edge of everything. I looked at Jason, who was sitting across from me, staring at his phone. His eyes were focused, locked onto the screen, as if it held the key to everything. I wondered if he could even feel the weight of what we were doing, or if he cared. "I never thought I'd be here," I whispered, my voice barely a murmur. Jason didn't look up. "We're doing what we have to do, Mom." I clenched my fists, the nails digging into my palms as I tried to hold back the flood of emotions threatening to spill over. "I know that. But what's the cost? What are we becoming?" He didn't answer me right away, and for a moment, I thought maybe he didn't have the answer either. The silence stretched, heavy and unbearable. "You don't get it, do you?" I finally snapped, the frustration bubbling up inside me. "We're tearing everything apart. For what? For revenge? For a fleeting moment of victory?" Jason put his phone down slowly, his eyes meeting mine. "It's not just about revenge. It's about justice. They've had this power over us for so long. It's time we took it back." But the more he said it, the more I realized the truth. Jason had changed. This wasn't just about getting back at the Westbournes for the way they treated us. This was about something deeper, something darker. As much as I loved my son, I had to admit, I didn't recognize him anymore. The cost of our actions hit harder now. It wasn't just the phone calls or the threats anymore. It was the toll it was taking on us, on our family. Jason, once the kind-hearted boy I raised, had become a man consumed by the need to win, and every day, I felt myself drifting farther from him. He'd already made his next move, a public revelation of the Westbourne family's most damaging secret. It would decimate their empire, he said, and finally level the playing field. But there was no turning back from this, no easy way out. "I think we've gone too far," I said one night, my voice shaky as I tried to get through to him. "You're risking everything we've worked for." But Jason wasn't listening. He was too focused on the end goal, too fixated on the idea of winning, to see what was slipping through his fingers. Our bond, our trust, was fraying. The Westbournes didn't sit idle. They retaliated with a fury I hadn't expected. They hired a public relations firm to destroy Jason's reputation, to smear his name in the media, to ruin his business, and it didn't stop there. They came after me, too. Anonymous threats, lies, everything designed to tear us down. I couldn't take it anymore. I knew the Westbournes were ruthless, but I never imagined they'd go this far. The toll it was taking on me, on Jason, how could we survive this? I could feel the panic rising in my chest, but I didn't let it show. I couldn't let Jason see me falter. But it wasn't just fear I was feeling, it was the overwhelming sense that we were losing ourselves. The fight had consumed us. "I can't keep doing this," I said one night, my voice tight with emotion. "This fight is costing too much. We've already lost so much." Jason turned to me, his face hardening. "We can't stop now, Mom. We're this close." But I was done. The game had changed. What started as a fight for respect had become a battle for survival, and I wasn't sure we'd survive it. The breaking point came when I decided to take control. I couldn't stand by and watch Jason destroy himself and our family any longer. I needed to find a way to end this before it consumed us both. I reached out to a trusted ally, someone who had experience dealing with powerful people and dirty tactics. I wasn't going to fight fire with fire anymore. There had to be another way. We needed a legal victory. We needed to expose the truth without tearing everything down in the process. Jason was too blinded by anger to see it, but I could still save us from ourselves. I made plans for a public speech, a chance to take the high road, to show the world we were better than the Westbournes. I didn't care about winning anymore. I cared about what we stood for, our integrity. But just as I thought I was regaining control, the truth hit me like a punch to the gut. I received a phone call from a trusted source. The Westbournes' manipulations ran deeper than I ever imagined. They had been pulling the strings for years, using their wealth and influence to control everything. But it wasn't just about money. It was personal, and it was something that could destroy everything we'd fought for. I sat down, holding the phone in a daze. I could feel the ground shifting beneath me. This was the revelation that could end it all. The truth was worse than I thought. It wasn't just a business deal. It was a betrayal that went beyond anything I could have imagined. I looked at Jason, who was sitting across from me, oblivious to what I had just learned. I knew what I had to do, but it wasn't easy. "Jason," I said, my voice steady but filled with resolve. "It's over. We can't keep fighting like this. The cost is too high." Jason's eyes hardened. "What are you talking about? We can't stop now." I stood up, the weight of the decision crashing down on me. This isn't just about winning anymore. It's about what we're willing to lose. And as I walked away from him, I realized the fight wasn't over. It was far from it. The day I realized the full cost of everything that had happened, it felt like the ground had shifted beneath me. Every choice, every step Jason and I had taken to go after the Westbourne family, it all came to this moment. My hands shook as I sat in the living room, the silence around us so thick it felt like I could barely breathe. We were on the edge of something, but I wasn't sure if it was victory or the point of no return. Jason had pushed everything to the limit. I watched him more closely now, seeing the same fire in his eyes that I had once nurtured, but now it felt different. It wasn't the fire of justice anymore. It was the fire of vengeance, and vengeance burns everything in its path. The media had picked up on our story, turning our private feud into a public spectacle. I'd always known the Westbournes were powerful, but I hadn't understood the scope of their reach. Now, as our family's drama spread across every news outlet, I was forced to watch as the pain Jason and I had endured for years became something for the world to gawk at. My worst fear had come true. My son had used our family's trauma to fuel his ambition, and I couldn't take it back. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him how wrong this was. But every time I opened my mouth, I hesitated. My own guilt weighed too heavily on me. This wasn't just his fault. It was mine too. I had been the one to raise him to fight, to stand up and take what he deserved, no matter the cost. Now I was reaping the consequences of those lessons. I sat there, torn between a mother's pride and a woman who saw everything falling apart. This was the moment I'd feared. The battle I had thought would bring justice now looked like nothing more than a battle to survive the wreckage. The tension in the house was unbearable. It wasn't just the Westbournes anymore. It was Jason. It was me. Our entire family had become collateral damage in a war we had started. I couldn't escape the truth anymore. Our actions had consequences, and they weren't just hurting the Westbournes, they were hurting us. At the local community event, it all came to a head. The press was there, the cameras were rolling, and there in front of the whole town, I had to face Jason. He had put us all out there, for everyone to see, and I could no longer keep my silence. "Jason!" I called out, my voice louder than I intended. The room quieted, all eyes on us. "What have you done?" He turned to face me, his face a mask of defiance. "What I had to do, Mom," he shot back. "What you should have done a long time ago." His words stung. How could he be so sure that this was the right path? We were standing on the edge of a cliff, and I was terrified of what would happen if we fell. "We were supposed to protect our family," I said, my voice cracking with the weight of the moment. And now look at us. And we're tearing each other apart. Jason didn't even flinch. You're weak, Mom. You always have been. That's why we're in this mess. The words hit harder than I expected. Weak? Me? I had raised him alone. I had sacrificed everything for him. And now, he was calling me weak? I felt the anger rise in me, but something else simmered beneath it. Hurt. Deep hurt. I wanted to pull him into my arms, to remind him of the boy he used to be. But he was too far gone now. As if the weight of our family's implosion wasn't enough, I overheard something that made my blood run cold. During the event, I found myself standing near a group of Westbourne family members. I wasn't trying to listen, but their conversation caught my attention. They were talking about me, about us, and what I heard shattered everything I thought I knew. The Westbournes had been manipulating things from the start. They didn't just use Jason and me for business gain. They had orchestrated our downfall years ago, starting with me. They had sabotaged my career, spread lies, and done everything they could to ruin us before we even knew we were at war with them. I felt like the ground beneath me had fallen away. All the years of pain, all the bitterness. I had been fighting the wrong battle. The Westbournes had been playing me from the beginning, and I had no idea. I felt like a fool, like everything I'd done had been for nothing. I had fought them, sure, but I hadn't even known what I was up against. I stood there, trying to process what I'd just learned. My heart raced as I realized the magnitude of what I now knew. The truth was uglier than I could have imagined. The question now was whether I should expose it or keep it buried, hoping the past would stay in the past. Later that night, after the event, I retreated to a quiet corner of the house. I needed to think, to process everything that had happened. I sat there, in the darkness, staring at nothing, trying to piece together the truth. I realized something. This war, this endless cycle of revenge, it had consumed us. Jason's ambition had consumed him, and now it was consuming me too. We had gone too far, and I didn't know how to stop it. But in that moment, I made a choice. I couldn't go on like this. I needed to take control of the situation. I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was a woman who had lost sight of her own values. It was time to fix that. I had to stop this madness, even if it meant facing everything I'd been running from. The next step was clear. I needed to take a public stand. I needed to clear the air, to tell the truth, and to reclaim the dignity that had been stolen from us. I took a deep breath, my resolve hardening. It was time to make things right, and I wasn't going to let anyone, including my son, stop me. As I prepared to make my statement, a phone call came that changed everything. The voice on the other end was familiar, but the message it carried was anything but. The Westbournes' manipulation wasn't just about business. It wasn't just about power. They had gone further, and their control over us had been more complete than I'd ever imagined. The bombshell left me reeling. I had one final decision to make. Should I expose everything and risk losing Jason in the process, or should I protect him, keeping the secrets hidden? I looked at the phone, then at Jason. The weight of the decision pressed down on me. I didn't know what the right thing to do was anymore. But I knew one thing. This fight was far from over. The house felt colder than usual that night. The weight of everything that had happened hung heavy in the air, and there I was, sitting in my living room, alone, staring at the flickering lights of the TV, though I wasn't watching anything. My mind was too busy, too full of everything that had led me to this point. The choices I'd made, the path Jason and I had taken together, none of it had felt like this when we first set out. The truth was, I wasn't sure if exposing everything had been the right decision anymore. The press, the chaos, the anger in my son's eyes, it was all so much more than I had bargained for. I had spent years teaching Jason to fight, to stand up for what was right, and now I wondered if we'd both been fighting the wrong battle all along. In the silence, the only thing I could hear was the echo of my own thoughts, and they weren't kind. What had we lost in the pursuit of justice? What had we sacrificed? Jason had become someone I barely recognized, driven by vengeance and an unrelenting desire to tear down the people who had wronged us. But somewhere in that fight, I lost sight of my own values. Now, standing at this crossroads, I didn't know if I was even capable of finding my way back. I thought about the years I spent raising Jason, the sacrifices I'd made, and how those sacrifices had led to this. It wasn't supposed to be this way. I never imagined that the family I'd fought so hard for would be at the center of a battle I couldn't control. All I had ever wanted was peace, for us to have what we deserved. But peace, it seemed, was the one thing we couldn't afford anymore. I closed my eyes, trying to push away the shame that threatened to swallow me whole. I had a choice to make. Jason had always been my son, my pride, and I'd pushed him so hard to succeed. But at what cost? The question gnawed at me. Could I still fix this? Could I still save him from the same destructive path I'd walked all these years? The phone rang, breaking my thoughts. I stared at it for a moment before answering, knowing full well who it would be. Jason. Mom, we need to talk. His voice was strained, and I could hear the anger simmering just beneath the surface. It had always been there, this quiet storm that raged in him, just waiting for the right moment to break. I know, Jason. I know what this is, I said, my own voice much calmer than I felt. I had to make a decision. I knew that. We're at the breaking point, Mom. You have to pick a side now. Either you stand with me against the Westbournes, or you're out of this fight. I can't keep doing this with you if you're not all in. His words hit like a slap. My son, the boy I had raised, was asking me to choose between him and what felt like everything I had fought for in my life. It was a decision no mother should ever have to make. I've been with you, Jason, every step of the way, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. But this has gone too far. I can't be a part of this anymore. He was silent on the other end of the line, and I could hear him breathing heavily, as if trying to contain his own rage. You don't get it, do you? I'm not asking for your support anymore. I'm demanding it. This is bigger than just us, and you're making a mistake if you think I'll stop now. I swallowed hard, feeling the sting of his words. He was right. I had pushed him, taught him to fight for what was his, and now I was telling him to stop. Was I being weak? Was I just too tired to keep fighting? Jason, I said quietly, you've become someone I don't recognize, and I'm scared of what this is doing to you. You're losing yourself in this, and I can't stand by and watch anymore. There was a long pause. When he finally spoke again, his voice was cold. Then maybe we're done here. I didn't know what to say. The line between us had been drawn, and there was no going back now. As if the weight of that conversation wasn't enough, I received another call, this time from the Westbournes. I almost didn't want to answer, but I knew I had no choice. They were offering me a settlement, a way out, a way to bury everything and pretend it never happened. All I had to do was publicly retract my accusations against them, and they'd walk away. I sat there in silence for a moment, staring at the letter in my hands. The offer was tempting. It would end everything. It would take away the pain, the constant fight. But the cost was more than just swallowing my pride. It would mean I'd have to pretend that all the lies, all the hurt, had never happened. It would mean letting Jason carry on his destructive crusade while I stood by and watched. My heart raced as I thought about the decision. The easy path was in front of me. I could take the money, take the settlement, and walk away from the war. But then what? What would I be left with? A hollow victory? A life I couldn't face? I looked at the letter again, feeling the weight of it settle in my bones. Was it worth the peace? Was it worth losing everything for? I couldn't keep running from this. The time had come. I called Jason one last time, asking him to meet me at the family gathering. We needed to talk. No more hiding. No more pretending. It was time to face the truth. When we met, the tension between us was palpable. The anger in Jason's eyes was unmistakable, but so was the hurt. I had pushed him too hard. I had taught him to fight when maybe what he needed most was a mother's love. Jason, I can't do this anymore, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I can't stand by and watch you destroy everything we've worked for. His eyes burned with fury. You're giving up, aren't you? You always do this. You never fight for what matters. I'm fighting for us, I said, holding back tears. But this fight isn't worth losing everything. I want to move on, Jason. I want peace. He scoffed. Peace. Peace is weakness. For a moment, I thought he might walk away, and part of me feared he would never look at me the same way again. But in that moment, I knew I had made the right decision. I had let go of the past, and that was all I could do. As I stood at the podium later that day, prepared to speak the truth, a part of me felt free. I had chosen to end the cycle. I had chosen peace. But the cost was steep. My son was lost to me, and there was no telling if he'd ever come back. I could only hope the storm would pass. The courtroom was silent, save for the rustling of papers and the occasional shuffle of feet. I sat there, my hands tightly gripping the sides of the chair as the weight of the moment pressed down on me. Today was the day everything would either fall into place or shatter beyond repair. The Westbournes had made their move, and now it was my turn to stand up, once and for all. I couldn't ignore the anxiety clawing at me. The feeling of self-doubt that I had tried to push aside for so long kept creeping back, pulling at my thoughts. I wasn't just fighting the Westbournes anymore. I was fighting myself, too. The truth I had spent so long hiding from, was now laid bare, and I had no idea whether it would bring justice or destroy everything I had worked for. As the clock ticked, I thought about the years I had spent pushing through life, the sacrifices I had made for my family. I had spent a lifetime trying to protect them from the world's judgment, but here I was, exposing everything to the world, and I wasn't sure anymore if it was worth it. Jason's face flashed in my mind. My son, my pride, my strength, had been caught in the middle of this storm. Had I pushed him too far? Had I really done the right thing by pushing for this fight? My heart ached as I thought about him, wondering if there was a way to fix the rift between us. But what could I do now? The damage was done. I took a deep breath and stood. Today wasn't about me anymore. It was about something bigger than my fears. It was about standing up for what was right, no matter the cost. The tension in the courtroom was unbearable. The lawyers exchanged barbs, each one trying to outdo the other with their arguments. My lawyer, a sharp and trusted ally, fought tooth and nail to prove our case. He laid out the evidence of the Westbournes' deceit, their manipulation, and the damage they had caused. But the Westbournes, with their wealth and influence, fought back with equal ferocity. They accused me of being emotionally unstable, of letting personal vendettas cloud my judgment. I could feel the sting of their words, their attempts to paint me as the villain. Every accusation made my heart tighten. Jason was sitting quietly in the back of the courtroom, his face unreadable. He had been quiet for hours, and I could feel his internal struggle. I could see it in his eyes, the conflict between loyalty to his mother and the family he was once so eager to be a part of. I knew he was torn, but what could I do? This was his fight as much as mine now. As the proceedings continued, my mind kept wandering back to Jason. What was he thinking? Was he beginning to doubt me? Was he ready to walk away from everything I had fought for? Then, just as the courtroom seemed to grow even colder, Jason stood up. My breath caught in my throat. He was walking to the stand, and for the first time in this entire ordeal, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't as lost as I thought. Your Honor, Jason's voice rang out, and the room fell silent. I've been caught between two sides for too long, between my mother and the Westbournes, but the truth is, I've been lied to by both. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Jason, my son, was standing up in front of the entire courtroom, and he was admitting to his own doubts. He was admitting that he had been manipulated by both sides, that the truth had been twisted and hidden from him. I know what my mother has fought for. I know the pain she's endured, he continued, his voice wavering for a moment. But I also know that I can't keep running from what I've learned. The truth. The truth is, I've been lied to, and I've been a part of the lies. He turned to face me, and my heart ached at the look in his eyes. Mom, I'm sorry. I've made so many mistakes, and I'm ready to make things right. But I need you to forgive me. Tears welled up in my eyes, and I could barely contain the flood of emotions rushing through me. I was angry at him, furious even, for betraying me, but at the same time, I was relieved. There was a chance, a slim one, but a chance for us to heal. I'm sorry, Jason, I whispered, my voice shaky. But this fight, it's bigger than us now. This isn't just about our family anymore. It's about exposing the truth. The Westbourne's lawyer made one last attempt to settle the case. We are prepared to offer a settlement, he said, his voice calm and calculated. If Mrs. Williams drops all charges and agrees to retract everything she has said about our clients, we are prepared to pay for her silence. The past can be erased. I felt my blood boil. How dare they? How dare they offer me money to keep quiet about everything they had done to me and my family? I stood, feeling the anger rise within me like a fire. No, I said firmly. I'm not going to be silenced. No amount of money or power will make me pretend that none of this ever happened. I will not back down. Not now. Not ever. The room seemed to hold its breath as I pulled out the final piece of evidence, the document that would expose everything, the Westbourne's involvement in sabotaging my career, their underhanded dealings, their lies. I slammed it on the table for everyone to see. Here's the truth, I said, my voice steady now. You wanted to destroy me, but now the truth is out. The Westbournes, visibly shaken, fought back with all their might, but it was too late. The courtroom knew the truth. I had won. But as the dust settled, I felt a sense of both relief and emptiness. I had exposed everything, but at what cost? Jason had come around, but the rift between us was still there. The road to healing would be long, but I had done what I had to do. Jason approached me after the trial. He stood there, hesitating for a moment before speaking. I was wrong, Mom, he said quietly. I don't know what the future holds for us, but I'm ready to rebuild. I need you in my life. I took a deep breath, finally feeling like I could exhale. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. And maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something better for both of us. Later, as I left the courtroom, the weight of everything began to settle on me. I had fought, I had won, but the battle for my family was far from over. The wounds ran deep, and healing would take time. But for now, I had peace. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could start living again. The weight of everything was pressing down on me. I had fought so hard for the truth, for justice, for my family. But now, here I was, at the edge of it all, trying to make one final decision. Jason and I had come a long way, but the journey was far from over. Today, I would make the choice that would either destroy or rebuild everything. The morning was quiet, almost too quiet. It felt like the calm before the storm, but instead of tension, there was a strange stillness in the air. I sat in my living room, reflecting on how far I had come. The anger that once consumed me had finally faded, leaving behind a deep sense of relief, but also the bitter realization of how much I had lost along the way. My family, my peace, and most painfully, my trust in my own judgment. It all felt so fragile now. Jason came to see me later that afternoon. The weight of his visit wasn't lost on me. This was our last chance. When he entered the room, he looked different, almost like a stranger in his own skin. The years of conflict and pain had aged him in a way I hadn't expected. Mom, I don't know where to go from here, he began, his voice strained with emotion. I've spent so much time fighting, so much time focusing on the Westbournes that I lost sight of what I was really fighting for. I was wrong. I've been wrong for so long. I could hear the guilt in his voice, and it twisted something deep inside me. This wasn't the son I raised. This wasn't the boy who once promised me that he would always stand by me. But I understood. I understood more than he could know. The battle had consumed us both, and now we were left with the consequences. Jason, I said softly, trying to hold back the flood of emotions. You didn't just betray me. You betrayed yourself. I know it hurts. I know the truth is painful, but this isn't the end of us. We still have a chance. You have a chance to find peace. For a long moment, we just sat there in silence. I could feel the weight of the past lingering between us. But in that silence, something began to shift. The anger and hurt that had built up between us slowly started to unravel. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I want to fix this. I want to make things right. But I don't know how." I placed my hand on his, feeling the tremor in his grip. "The first step is forgiveness, Jason. Not just from me, but from yourself." The next day, everything changed. The Westbournes had made one final move. After all the pain, the court battles, and the lies, they reached out to me with an offer. They wanted to settle, to make it all go away. All I had to do was retract everything I had said, and the past would be erased, forgotten. The money they offered was more than I could ever imagine, but the cost was clear. My blood boiled as I read their proposal. They thought they could buy me. They thought they could make me forget everything they had done, but I wasn't that woman anymore. I wasn't the woman who let them dictate my life. I picked up the phone and dialed my lawyer. "Tell them I'm not interested. I won't sell my soul." The decision was final. I would never back down. Not for them. Not for anyone. The day of the final confrontation with the Westbournes came quickly. I stood tall, my heart steady in my chest as I entered the meeting room. This was it. There would be no more games, no more pretending. I had no fear left in me. They tried to persuade me, of course. They tried to offer me more money, to make me believe that I was better off walking away from this fight. But there was nothing they could say that would change my mind. "No," I said, looking each of them in the eye. "I won't back down. You've stolen from me, from my family, for far too long. But this ends now. I'm done with you. You no longer have any power over me." Their faces were cold, their arrogance still intact, but I could see the flicker of doubt in their eyes. They knew they had lost. The truth had come out, and there was no way to take it back. I stood, my back straight, my heart free. "You've taken enough from me, but you won't take my dignity. You won't take my peace. I'm moving on, and so should you." In the weeks that followed, I began to rebuild my life. The Westbournes were nothing more than a memory, a chapter in my past that no longer had any hold on me. I started to focus on myself, something I hadn't done in years. I spent more time with my community, helping others who had been through the same struggles, using my story to help them find their way. Jason and I were still rebuilding. It wasn't easy, but we were trying. The trust that had been shattered was slowly being put back together, one conversation at a time. We weren't the same as we once were, but we were stronger in ways we never expected. I also started working on myself in ways I had neglected before. I took time to heal, to understand who I was outside of the fight, outside of the pain. It wasn't an easy journey, but it was one I knew I had to take. I was determined to live the rest of my life on my terms, free from the ghosts of the past. One evening, as I stood at the edge of my porch, looking out at the sunset, I realized something. I had survived. I had fought for the truth, for my family, and for myself. And now, I was free. The past would always be with me, but it wouldn't define me anymore. I had learned that healing was not a straight line, but I had found peace, and that was all I needed. Jason came up behind me, placing his hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said, his voice softer now. "For everything." I smiled, feeling the weight of everything we had been through. "It's all right, Jason. We're going to be all right." Together, we looked toward the future, knowing that while the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, it was ours to walk. I realized that my journey wasn't about fighting the past. It was about forging a future, one where I was the architect of my own happiness.